Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to pop the hood on organizations to see how they really work. We're going to look at them like a machine, one with its own unique operating system. So think about your own job for a second. Does it feel like a well-oiled machine where everything just clicks? Or is it more like a sputtering engine, always on the verge of breaking down? Well, that difference usually comes down to its core design. So let's grab our tools and get started. All right, to understand this machine, we're going to break it down into three and only three critical systems. You've got the blueprint, that's how it's built. You've got the driver, that's who's steering it. And you've got the dashboard, that's how you know if you're winning.
Okay, let's start with the blueprint. This is the nuts and bolts, the formal structure, the very skeleton of the organization that really dictates how work gets done day to day.
You know, when managers are putting an organization together, they're basically playing with these 6 key building blocks. Every single one is a lever they can pull to change how the machine runs. We're going to zoom in on just 3 of the most fundamental ones to see how this all works.
First up is work specialization. Seriously, just think about McDonald's. They're the absolute masters of this. You've got one person on orders, one person on the grill, one on fries. It's the art of taking a huge job and breaking it into these tiny, super repeatable tasks. Why? Because it makes the whole process incredibly efficient.
Next, we have the classic chain of command. You know, it's that invisible line of authority that runs from the CEO all the way down to the front lines. In theory, it's supposed to get rid of confusion by answering the most basic workplace question there is. Who do I go to if I have a problem? And that leads right into span of control. Have you ever felt like your boss has way too many people to manage? Or maybe too few? That's what this is all about. It's simply the number of employees a manager can effectively lead. And whether that number is 4 or 40, it completely changes the shape and the feel of a team. So, when you start mixing and matching these building blocks, you know, how specialized the jobs are, how the authority flows, all that stuff, you pretty much always end up with one of 2 very, very different types of organizational machines. On one side, you have the mechanistic organization. Think of it like a rigid, predictable assembly line, super controlled. And on the other side, you've got the organic organization, which is much more like a flexible, collaborative startup. Now, here is the most important takeaway here. Neither one is better. The right design depends entirely on what the machine is actually built to do.
Okay, so now we get the blueprint of the machine, right? But now we got to talk about who's actually driving this thing. Because even a high-performance engine needs the right kind of driver to get the most out of it.
At its absolute core, that's what leadership is all about. It's not some title on a business card or a corner office. It's the process of influencing a group of people to move together in the same direction to achieve a common goal. And this is where it gets really interesting. You can't just drop any old driver into any machine and expect it to work. I mean, you wouldn't put a Formula 1 racer behind the wheel of a giant bulldozer, right? And you wouldn't ask a construction expert to win a Grand Prix. The leadership style has to be perfectly matched to the organizational machine. So, what are the perfect pairings? Well, for that rigid, predictable, mechanistic machine, an autocratic leadership style is often the best fit. But for that flexible, adaptable, organic machine, a democratic style is the way to go. So what's an autocratic driver actually like? Think total control. They dictate the work methods, they make all the big calls themselves, and they limit employee participation. Now, that might sound a little intense, but in a stable, mechanistic system where efficiency is everything, that kind of centralized command gives you the clarity and the speed you need to keep the machine humming along perfectly. The democratic driver, on the other hand, is the polar opposite. They pull the team into the decision-making process. They delegate authority, and they use feedback to coach and grow their people. This approach is absolutely essential for an organic structure, where you need all hands on deck to innovate and solve really complex problems. Okay, so we've got our machine's blueprint. We have the right driver behind the wheel. But how do we actually know if we're on course? How do we know if we're performing well? That's where the dashboard comes in. Now,
In management speak, this dashboard is called controlling. It's really just the process of monitoring, comparing, and correcting performance. It's how a manager glances at the gauges to see if the organization is actually on track to meet its goals. And the control process itself is actually beautifully simple. It's just 3 steps. First, you measure what's actually happening. Second, you compare that measurement to the standard, the goal you set in the first place. And third, you decide what, if anything, you're going to do about it. Let's look at a real-world example. Check out this sales report. The standard column is the goal. Actual is what really happened. And that variance column, that's step 2, the comparison. You can see right away, insecticide sales absolutely crushed the goal. But herbicide sales, well, they missed by a pretty wide margin.
So picture this. You're the manager. You're looking at this dashboard. You see the good, you see the bad. What's your next move? This brings us to the final and, frankly, the most important step in the entire process. As the manager, you've basically got 3 moves. First, you can do nothing. Maybe that tiny dip in fertilizer sales is just statistical noise, not worth worrying about. Second, you can correct the performance. Dig in and find out why herbicide sales are struggling, and then fix it. Or third, you can revise the standard itself. Maybe that insecticide goal was way too low to begin with, and it's time to aim higher.
So, we've got our core components, the blueprints, the driver, and the dashboard. Now, let's put it all together and think about what this means for the modern organization, for the workplace of today and tomorrow. And this brings us to the single most important idea of this entire explainer. A high-performing organization is not an accident. It's designed. Its blueprint, its driver, and its dashboard have to be in perfect harmony. If you put a democratic leader in a rigid machine, you get chaos. If you put an autocratic leader in a creative system, you kill innovation. Everything has to fit together. And that leaves us with one final and really crucial question. Look, the world of work is changing faster than ever before. With things like AI and remote teams totally rewriting the rules, the old machine blueprints might already be obsolete. So what kind of organization do we need to start building right now to win the future?